Wow, you really married someone so worthless. Richard, you have no taste, do you? Think about how embarrassing it is for me to introduce this person as part of my family. A poor high school graduate. What a disgrace to the family. You two don't even have seats here. Go home.
On what was supposed to be a beautiful wedding day, the bride, Kate, spat out those cruel words. Her voice dropped an octave, and she sounded like a completely different person from the usually charming Kate. Kate laid bare her true feelings, standing tall with her chest out, breathing slightly harder as she looked down at me and Richard with pure contempt.
Let's go.
Yeah. Without saying a word in return, we quietly left the scene.
Oh, you're running away? You're good at that, right? Don't ever show your face in front of me again. Goodbye.
Richard gently rubbed my back as if to comfort me. After this, Kate, who had finally shown her true colors, would face the consequences of her own actions. I'm Emily, 27 years old. I'll soon be changing my last name to Johnson. Richard, my soon-to-be husband, is 7 years older than me and a reliable, kind-hearted man. No matter the situation, he stays calm and always makes me feel secure. Even though I'm an adult myself, he's someone I find myself leaning on. When I heard he had a younger sister, it all made sense. Only an older brother could radiate such reassuring warmth. His family seemed close-knit, and I imagined he must have grown up in a wonderful home. He seemed so perfect, like a character straight out of a romantic novel. With our wedding just around the corner, I felt like the heroine of a storybook romance. But that blissful dream came crashing down. Once the wedding was officially planned, I met Richard's family for the first time. We arrived at a cozy family-style restaurant, and just as I expected, his parents were warm, gentle, and welcoming. The conversation flowed easily, and I finally felt relieved. But then, when his sister arrived late and stepped in, my heart nearly stopped. My throat tightened, and I couldn't breathe. It took me a moment to process what was happening before my eyes.
Sorry I'm late. Oh, wait.
She apologized in a cheerful voice. But when her eyes landed on me, her expression shifted. She furrowed her brow for just a second, so brief I thought I imagined it, before smiling brightly again.
Hey, are you Emily?
She tilted her head and leaned in, peering into my face. I froze, unable to look away.
It really is you, Emily. Wow, I can't believe my brother's partner is you. I'm Kate. Don't you remember me?
With a carefree smile, she clung to my arm. It was like we were long-lost best friends or something. Kate was someone I could never forget. She was my high school classmate.
Oh, come on. Don't be so shocked. Say something hi or yeah, at least.
Hi. I couldn't form words or push her away. Kate burst out laughing.
Really? Did you just say hi? You're hilarious. You've always been so funny, Emily. You haven't changed a bit.
The atmosphere lightened, and Richard and his parents smiled warmly.
Looks like we were meant to be connected all along.
I wanted to rip that so-called connection apart.
I'm so happy to see you, Emily.
Her outstretched hand was pale, flawless, and smooth without a single blemish. Oh, I suppressed the urge to slap her hand away, and the words caught in my throat again.
Wow, you're seriously in shock. Oh yeah, Emily, you've always frozen up when you're surprised. It's okay, and take your time and process your feelings.
Her kind words had the opposite effect, sending a rush of heat to my head. There was no way I could sort out my emotions. Kate was the very person who had pushed me to the edge.
Back in high school, we were always together, weren't we? I liked you so much that I might have been a bit clingy. I've reflected on that as an adult. Sorry, okay?
Her unexpected apology made me finally look up. Kate was staring straight at me, her eyebrows drawn down in an almost apologetic way. For some reason, my tension eased. She was right. We had grown up.
Let's be close again.
I reminded myself that I was an adult and couldn't let old grudges show. I had to act friendly. Yeah, I forced a smile, though I'm sure it looked awkward. Kate seemed so different from the person I once knew. I told myself things would be fine. I stood up to go to the restroom, hoping to calm down, but Kate followed me. No matter how many times I silently chanted, "It's okay, it's okay," the fact that she was walking right beside me made cold sweat trickle down my back. And just as I feared, as soon as we were alone, Kate revealed her true colors.
Seriously? You, of all people, marrying my brother? Unbelievable. I heard he wanted someone calm and kind. You really fooled him, huh?
The sudden outburst left me speechless again.
This is the worst, having a gloomy relative like you. It's got to end. Break it off with him.
No way! My voice came out louder than I expected, surprising even me. Kate's eyes widened in displeasure.
Oh, but I heard you already bought an engagement ring and signed for an apartment. If you cheated and got caught, that'd solve everything. Although, let's be real, who'd cheat with you, right?
Again, I clamped my mouth shut. No matter what she said, leaving Richard was not an option. Maybe she sensed my resolve, because Kate let out a spiteful sigh.
If you spill anything about the past, you'll regret it. You're just that weirdo who ran away in high school. Don't try anything funny.
She warned me in a low voice, and I swallowed hard. Without waiting for a reply, Kate spun around and walked back to the lively private room where Richard and his parents were waiting. She was aware that revealing the truth would also hurt her. Though my legs felt weak, I somehow managed to stay standing. Kate had been my high school classmate. I had entered high school excited about studying and making lots of friends. In my freshman year, I enjoyed school life, but things changed completely in my sophomore year when I was assigned to a new class. One by one, my classmates started ignoring me until I found myself completely isolated. Cold, piercing stares followed me everywhere, and I could hear mean-spirited whispers loud and clear.
Hey, Emily, want to eat lunch together?
The only person who reached out to me was Kate. She often invited me to eat lunch with her in an empty classroom.
Why do you think you became a target, Emily? You're so kind and sweet. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's because you're cute and they're jealous? Geez, they're so immature. But don't worry, you've got me.
At the time, I wasn't exactly cute, not by any stretch of the imagination. Some girls in class had started wearing light makeup, but I was still a plain, awkward girl. Kate became my only emotional support. Even though I trusted her completely, the truth was that she was orchestrating everything behind the scenes. Pretending to be concerned, she spread rumors and made sure I stayed isolated. On the surface, Kate was a bright, sociable honor student. Who would ever believe she had a dark side?
I just stirred things up a little. I never laid a finger on anyone, okay? I'm not the bad one here, right? I was being nice to you, and you're holding a grudge against me? That's so mean of you, Emily.
When I realized the truth and asked Kate, "That's a lie, right?" She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she admitted it without hesitation. And she had zero guilt. She seemed to revel in the role of the kind classmate who supported the lonely girl. But when she got bored of playing that role, the relentless torment began. The silent treatment from the entire class wasn't enough. My belongings frequently went missing, and I was openly insulted. Every day felt like a struggle just to survive. Even if it wasn't obvious on the surface, there was no doubt in my mind that Kate was pulling the strings behind the scenes. When I finally gathered the courage to talk to the teacher, Kate's reputation as a polite and stellar student gave her the upper hand. At the time, I was often forgetful and performed poorly on tests, which didn't make a good impression on the teacher. Even when I explained that all of this was due to the bullying, the teacher didn't believe me. My parents tried to step in, but the teacher only apologized and said, "Emily seems to have a tendency to lie, and it's been difficult for us too." The teacher even suggested, perhaps she's imagining things due to some emotional distress. Why not consult a doctor? It was obvious the teacher didn't want to make it a big issue. In the end, I transferred schools in the winter of my sophomore year. At my farewell, the classmates and teachers shed fake tears and said heartfelt goodbyes. It wasn't supposed to end like this. If only I had never met Kate, maybe my life would have turned out differently. Fast forward to today, the first step toward my marriage to Richard. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't, not with Richard and his parents watching. I forced myself to return to the table, and Kate approached me with an angelic smile.
Oh yeah, didn't you transfer schools during sophomore year, Emily?
Really?
Kate covered her mouth with her hand as if realizing her slip up.
Oh no, was that supposed to be a secret?
What a terrible actress. After that, I couldn't remember how the food tasted or what we talked about with Richard's parents. I couldn't bring myself to break things off with Richard, but I couldn't shake the unease about being related to Kate. Thankfully, before we got married, Kate moved out of her parents' house and started living alone in an apartment. This gave me some peace of mind when visiting my in-laws. The chances of running into her would be significantly reduced. Still, not all of my worries had disappeared. Though not all my fears disappeared, my love for Richard was something I wasn't willing to give up. We successfully registered our marriage and started our life together in an apartment. Kate's tears at the wedding as she congratulated us gave me chills. But I held back, for once we got through this, I wouldn't see her for a while. I took a part-time job during the day and spent my evenings simmering soup for my wonderful husband. I felt so happy. I had put Kate completely out of my mind, until I ran into her unexpectedly at work.
Well, what are you doing here?
I was tending to the flower bed outside an apartment building a little farther from home when I suddenly noticed Kate standing right behind me. The corner of her mouth curled slightly as she looked down at me with disdain. It was her apartment building, but since it was a weekday afternoon, I assumed she'd be at work. She glanced at the broom leaning next to me and gave me a knowing look.
Oh, so you're a cleaner? Thanks so much for keeping our apartment nice and clean.
Kate mocked me with a fake smile.
Wow, thanks for all your hard work. I mean, being a cleaner is totally the perfect job for a high school grad, right? Oh, but I'm not making fun of you. Actually, I think it's great that you're working even after escaping high school. You're so admirable and amazing.
My face felt hot. When I instinctively touched my cheek, Kate burst out laughing.
Hey, you've got dirt on your face. So gross. But why does it suit you so well?
I turned my back to her. Leaving the broom where it was, I shamefully ran away. Since then, I've made sure to stay away from that apartment complex. I hated myself for abandoning such an important job halfway through. I had been looking forward to seeing the flowers I planted in the garden bloom soon. I felt down for a while and sank into self-loathing. But over time, as I settled into my peaceful life with Richard, I gradually found my emotional balance again. And then, another storm entered my life. I received a wedding invitation from Kate. After much deliberation, I decided to attend. She's so good at putting on a front, so there was no way she'd ruin her own wedding. She even cried at our wedding, pretending to be a good person. Finally, her wedding day arrived. Even though I thought I was prepared, an invisible weight pressed down on me. For 3 days, I could barely eat a bite.
If you're not feeling well, we can skip it. Don't push yourself.
I'm okay. Of course, I didn't want to go, but skipping out on the day of might only earn Kate's wrath. I didn't want any unnecessary drama. Just don't look at the bride and groom, I just enjoy the food. I tried to calm myself with that thought. But just as Richard stepped away to use the restroom, leaving me alone, Kate seized the moment and deliberately approached me.
Oh wow, I thought there was a shabby-looking guest, but it's you, Emily.
She beamed as she spread her arms wide for a hug. Her words, however, were vile.
Cheap-looking dress, huh? No matter how much you dress up, you can't hide the poor vibe. I bet Richard had to buy it for you, didn't he? Poor guy. He married someone with no looks and no substance.
To everyone else, she looked like a radiant bride. Her mask of perfection was still firmly in place. Nausea washed over me, and I took a step back. I'm not running away. I'm keeping my distance from her. My knees were shaking, but I turned my face away and ignored her.
Oh, are you giving me that defiant look? Wow, Emily, how rude. You're a loser. You should always be shy and fidgety like you usually are.
She raised her chin and looked down at me. Then I noticed a figure standing behind her.
So, this is the real you, Kate.
A voice suddenly came from above, making Kate whirl around. There stood Richard, sadness and disgust in his eyes.
So you've been belittling Emily like this? Now, just like back then, Kate, you've really disappointed me.
Richard?
Kate's two-faced persona was finally exposed to Richard, shattering her good girl image into pieces. Maybe this would finally make her behave, but I was being too optimistic.
I'm just speaking the truth. I'm not wrong.
Kate pulled off her mask completely, her expression dark and twisted. Her voice dropped an octave, and she was no longer the cheerful Kate everyone knew.
This girl ran away from high school because she's a spineless loser. And you married her? Come on, Richard. You have terrible taste. Think about how humiliating it is for me to introduce someone like her as part of the family. She drags down my reputation. By the way, my husband is a doctor. His parents and even his extended family are all doctors. A poor high school graduate like her? Total disgrace. You guys don't even have a place here. Go home.
Kate bared her true feelings. Standing tall and proud, she sneered at Richard and me, her breaths quick and shallow as if she was feeding off her own hatred.
Let's go.
Okay. We didn't say anything back to her and quietly walked away.
Oh, you're running away. That's what you're good at, right? Don't ever show your face in front of me again. Goodbye.
Kate's twisted smile lingered as she watched us walk away.
It's okay, Emily. I'm on your side.
Richard gently patted my back. That's right. I wasn't alone. There was nothing to fear from Kate's bluster. I had no idea that her wedding was about to unravel. It must have been about 30 minutes after we left the venue. While relaxing at a nearby cafe, my phone started ringing. The caller ID read Kate. I hesitated to answer, and the ringing stopped. But then Richard's phone began buzzing. We ignored that call too, but she immediately called my phone again.
She kicked us out, so what could she want now?
Richard shrugged as the phone continued to ring. The call log showed Kate's name stacked 30 times, calling that much in just a few minutes. Richard sighed and finally pressed the answer button.
Where are you? The wedding is starting.
Kate's voice was frantic, almost sobbing.
Where? You told us to leave, so we left.
No, I didn't mean it. I need you here. Please, Richard. Come back with Emily.
She sounded like a desperate child clinging for help. If the baby sister is crying, a kind older brother would normally rush to her side.
All right.
And so, we headed back to the venue.
Richard, where have you been? You're so late.
As soon as Kate saw Richard walk in, she wiped her tears in relief. She tried to hug him, but Richard swiftly turned away, rejecting her.
Richard,
Although Richard had rushed over during this crisis, he wasn't there to play the hero.
Why did you call me back, Kate? You're the one who told us to leave.
well, because it's my wedding.
We were standing in the lobby of the venue. Kate had been anxiously waiting for Richard's return, unable to stay still, checking outside repeatedly. Richard's parents stood nearby, their expressions just as stern as his.
But when you left, Mom and Dad said they'd leave too. It's my wedding. Why is everyone being so selfish?
Kate still played the victim, clueless about the seriousness of the situation.
Do you not understand why they decided to leave too?
Richard's question made Kate tilt her head slightly in confusion. She couldn't comprehend why her doting parents would walk out on her.
It's because I told them everything.
What?
I told them all about the awful things you said to Emily.
Kate's face drained of color. Her red lipstick stood out unnaturally against her pale complexion.
Emily is my precious wife, and I won't forgive anyone who disrespects her, not even you, Kate.
It turned out that after we left the venue, Richard had immediately called his parents and explained everything. Their parents were furious, and that's how things spiraled out of control.
White.
Kate glanced at her parents, terrified, but their piercing gazes were fixed on her.
I didn't do anything wrong. Emily has always been a liar. That's why she transferred schools in the first place. Who are you going to believe? Me or some crazy girl like her?
Kate clung to her parents, trying to shield herself from their condemning eyes. But Richard swayed his phone in the air.
I couldn't believe Kate would say such awful things either. That's why I recorded it. I played everything she said earlier for Mom and Dad.
What?
Kate collapsed to the floor. She covered her face with her hands, still trying to play the role of the innocent good girl, and burst into pitiful sobs.
I've heard from Richard about the horrible things you did to Emily in the past. Honestly, it was hard to believe. It seemed impossible that you could do something like that. But now after today, I know the truth. Kate, you've disappointed me.
Richard's father spoke in a calm yet resolute tone without raising his voice. Kate reached out her tear-soaked hand to her father, but he didn't take it. The heavy silence pressed down on the room. Her arm dropped, and she collapsed to the floor like a broken doll. What Kate didn't know was that before our wedding, I had confessed everything to Richard. Seeing how much I was suffering, he had gently but firmly coaxed the truth out of me. At first, Richard had looked bewildered. He couldn't believe that his bright, popular, and accomplished sister could have done such a thing. But he didn't dismiss my story. He listened, processed it, and consulted his parents. Although they still wanted to believe in Kate, they didn't outright accuse me of lying either. To protect my peace of mind, they even suggested that Kate move out and live alone.
Emily, what our daughter did was truly unforgivable. We can't apologize enough.
Richard's father apologized to me.
I didn't do anything wrong. Bringing up the past is so unfair.
Kate's true feelings slipped out amidst her sobs. Even as her family apologized to me for her, she showed no remorse. By now, the sobbing bride had attracted the attention of the guests in the lobby. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, approached Kate, her heels clicking softly on the floor. At first, I thought she was going to comfort her, but instead, She stopped a few feet away and spoke quietly.
You're fake crying.
When a woman in her early 20s spoke up, Kate lifted her head. Her anguished sobs and streaming tears stopped instantly. Kate's eyes, sharp like a hawk stalking its prey, made the woman flinch, but out of sheer fear, she blurted out her true feelings.
Stop pretending to be nice. Please don't bully people anymore.
The young woman's face turned pale as if she regretted speaking out, but she gathered her courage and met Kate's gaze head-on. Judging by her formal tone and the age gap, she wasn't her friend, probably a junior colleague. Her clenched fists and trembling frame suggested she was one of Kate's current targets. She must have seen this as her chance to escape from Kate's torment and decided to expose the truth. Her legs were trembling pitifully. As I reached out to support her shoulders, an angry shout from a young man came from behind.
You're the bully, Susan.
The woman, called Susan, shuddered at the sound of her name. Without my support, she might have collapsed.
Kate always confided in me, and she told me you kept blaming her for your mistakes at work. You probably messed up on purpose just to make her look bad.
When one man shouted, several others chimed in with, "Yeah, that's right." Even an older man cast a scornful look at Susan.
Kate told me that Susan spread nasty rumors about her having an affair with the boss. So dirty. You're just jealous of Kate because she's pretty and smart. Jealousy is so ugly. I'll protect you, Kate.
The older man puffed out his chest proudly, while the younger man glared at him.
Are you serious? I'm the one protecting Kate.
Excuse me? What are you talking about? Kate's mine. She told me she's only marrying because of her parents, but I'm the one she really loves.
The men, caught up in their delusions, seemed to forget they were still at a wedding venue as they argued over who Kate truly loved. Not only these two, but a few more. Even the bald manager accused of having an affair with Kate stepped in, saying, "Kate's in love with me."
Stop, please.
But Kate's cry fell on deaf ears as the men continued to argue. Eventually, they all reached the same conclusion.
Wait, were all of us just being used by Kate?
She had manipulated their desires, using them to bully anyone she found annoying. She had even gotten involved with men she didn't care about to corner a single junior colleague. The men's stories about Susan's alleged wrongdoings unraveled quickly, and they were full of inconsistencies and contradictions. Those blinded by love seemed to snap out of their daze.
No, that's not true. I care about all of you. You're all my precious boyfriends.
You call it friendship, but you crossed the line, didn't you?
Her desperate excuse was cut down immediately. Then, even the women began to speak up.
So, Kate, was it a lie when you called me an old hag who'll never get married behind my back?
Everyone grew suspicious and began questioning if the things Kate had said about Susan were true. As a result, the contradictions in each testimony became clear, and suspicion fell entirely on Kate. Accusations rained down on her one after another. With no chance to defend herself, Kate stood frozen, her eyes vacant. "You're still doing this. You haven't changed at all since high school," I muttered under my breath, making Kate's head snap up as if stung. Even with her lies exposed, she couldn't stand being looked down on by someone she considered beneath her.
What did I ever do to you? I was nice to you, wasn't I? I don't know anything about scheming. Weak people are to blame. You're just a gloomy coward who ran away from high school.
She seemed to be calming herself by putting me down. Her lips curled slightly as she glared at me, breathing heavily. It was clear that Kate would never reflect or change. As long as I stayed weak, she would keep hunting me down. So what if I ran away? I said it firmly, though my heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst. This time, Susan supported me. No, I didn't run away. I cut you out. I decided you weren't worth being part of my life. You're not someone important to me, and I don't care enough to try to fix you. Kate's face twisted with rage. Cracks spread across her perfectly applied foundation, shattering the mask of the good girl.
No.
For someone who was usually so articulate, she was at a complete loss for words when confronted. I realized then, Kate was the weak one all along.
You're just a gloomy high school grad.
Her insult sounded as juvenile as a grade schooler shouting, "Your mom's ugly." How pathetic. A high school grad?
Everyone hated you. You failed your classes, and you transferred schools like a coward.
The trembling in my legs had stopped without me noticing. Yes, I transferred schools, but I didn't drop out. I worked hard after transferring and graduated from college.
What?
She must have assumed that I had become a recluse after transferring schools. Kate's mouth opened and closed like a fish as she struggled to come up with a new attack.
Even if you graduated, you're still a cleaner, aren't you? You're still at the bottom of society.
Pointing at me with her eyes wide in rage and contempt, she looked utterly vile. Richard and I exchanged a glance and nodded. It was time to tell her my truth. My job isn't a cleaner. I just clean the entrance of the apartment I own once in a while.
Own? Did you just say own?
Her voice was flat and deflated. Unable to put on a brave front, Kate simply looked up at me. My parents passed down some properties to me, such as land, apartments, and condos. Most of them are managed by a company, but I like doing small maintenance tasks like cleaning myself.
Passed down? But your parents are still alive. Oh, a living inheritance. Damn it. You're the daughter of a landlord? Even as a high school transfer, you were never poor. You were laughing at me this whole time, weren't you? You're awful.
Kate's eyes filled with tears as she forced out bitter words. Richard's voice cut through hers.
The awful one here is you, Kate. You never wondered why the apartment you're living in has such great amenities, but a ridiculously low rent. That's because Emily was letting you stay there as a favor. Even if you didn't know that, the way you've acted is disgraceful.
That can't be.
Kate's pride was in shreds. She hugged herself as if the emotional wounds were physical pain. And yet, she was still stubborn.
So what? I don't care. I'll move out of that dumb apartment. I'm marrying a doctor and living in a mansion. I'll have a perfect life.
Her voice trembled, but she refused to admit defeat. She was completely oblivious to her surroundings, forgetting that she was surrounded by guests. And right there, standing tall in a sharp silver tuxedo, was the groom himself.
After everything you've shown here, do you really think I'd still marry you?
What?
It was an obvious outcome to everyone except Kate. She stood there, frozen, not even blinking, as though time had stopped for her. Richard's parents, along with Richard and the groom, formally announced that the wedding was canceled. Kate, practically glued to the floor, probably didn't even hear their apologies or the murmurs of the crowd. As the gathered guests gradually left, we were the last to go, ignoring the dazed Kate as we walked away. In the following days, Kate revived and began blaming the groom, accusing him of canceling the engagement unfairly. But this only made him furious. Despite everything, he'd still had some lingering affection for her and had covered the wedding cancellation fees himself. Now she was demanding reimbursement. It also came to light that Kate had used her usual manipulative tactics to win him in the first place. She had harassed his ex-girlfriend until they broke up and had even called in fake complaints to the hospital where he worked, leaving bad reviews to wear him down mentally and emotionally. With both his personal and professional life in shambles, Kate slithered into the cracks of his vulnerability. Even after discovering that their meeting had been orchestrated, he was kind enough not to demand reimbursement for the wedding expenses or compensation for her infidelity during their engagement. But Kate was the one who shattered that kindness.
Why should I pay the fees and compensation? Okay, maybe the cheating rumors. But what's this about defamation and interference with his job? He's rich. And why is he trying to take money from me?
Her dream of marrying into wealth had turned to dust, leaving her with a massive bill. Since she terminated her apartment lease for the wedding, she now had no place to live. Of course, Richard's family had no intention of helping her. To make things worse for her, Richard's parents had sold their house and moved into a condo that I owned. When Kate returned to what she thought was her family home, she found it empty. The apartment she finally managed to rent had a shared hallway with burnt-out light bulbs and cobwebs everywhere. It was always dimly lit, making it feel more like a haunted house. Kate had also quit her job early, thinking her marriage would secure her a life of luxury, so she had no income. She went to several job interviews, but after everything that happened, she seemed to give off an aura of bitterness, or maybe her acting skills had simply worsened, resulting in rejection after rejection. When she wandered near her old workplace, hoping to return, she ran into one of the men she had toyed with. That's when Kate had a brilliant idea.
Why don't we get married?
The man, once obsessed with her, simply answered, "No." But Kate wasn't the type to give up after just one rejection. Kate began lurking outside offices, approaching any man who had ever shown interest in her.
Why don't we get married?
She missed her chance with a doctor, but it seems she decided to settle for an ordinary office worker. As long as she could escape her poverty-stricken life in that rundown apartment, she didn't care. But not a single man agreed to marry her. Kate became infamous in the area as the desperate marriage lady. Instead of job hunting properly, she overestimated her own charm and desperately searched for a convenient ATM. And, well, you can guess how that turned out. With no income, her debt piled up, and she couldn't even pay the low rent on her shabby apartment. The door, already weak from years of wear, might fall apart from all the knocks from debt collectors, or worse, she might get evicted and caught by them. No matter how you looked at it, her future seemed bleak. As for Richard and me, we're living peacefully. Tonight, I was cooking dinner, feeling happier than usual.
Wow, we're having a feast tonight. What's the occasion?
Well, our family is about to grow.
Wait, you mean?
Richard shot up from his seat. When I nodded, he hugged me tightly, his face crinkled with joy. I'm sure his parents will cry tears of joy when they hear about their first grandchild. I'm about to become the mother of a child who will be loved and celebrated by everyone. I want to be a strong mother, someone who can speak up and say no when something doesn't feel right. For my sake and for my child's.